What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Lucid. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility, and where I see things going. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off this upcoming week, you have Monday going to be more of a technical driven day. So in Lucid's case, that's somewhat okay. So I'm going to kind of talk about that near the end of the video. Tuesday, durables. And then on Wednesday, you have the dreaded Fed interest rate decision. Of course, I don't think anyone is expecting a cut or a hike, but what is going to be stated afterwards, that definitely will move the market quite significantly. As I brought up in my video yesterday, there was kind of the topic of inflation and raising of rates. So a lot of people are somewhat cautiously going to be paying attention to what Powell says afterwards. So that is going to be what really moves the market. GDP on Thursday over and above the typical initial jobless claims and whatever else. And then on Friday, to cap it all off, you have PCE. A lot of big data points to really move the market, as well a lot of big companies unveiling the earnings. I think in general, we all know whatever happens to Tesla, good, bad, and the ugly, will trickle down to other EVs. And since their Q4 numbers weren't really, they were okay, but it was lower than the kind of Wall Street expectations. It's going to be kind of Russian roulette for the most part on how the market is really interpreting Tesla's numbers. But regardless, though, I have a feeling that it might be ultimately flat for Tesla, and through that potentially trickle down to Lucid, not really affecting it all that much. But I could be wrong, right? Tesla could sell off because of their earnings, and again, that would domino through Lucid and the other EVs aside from that. One thing to take note of, though, is that even though there isn't a tentative date set, Trump, he stated that by February the 1st, he is going to give updates on EVs as well as tariffs. I think more leaning towards Canada and Mexico, but that should be coming right around the corner. So he's already stated about the mandate being gone, but what is still stuck in limbo is that $7,500 tax credit. So I think in general, if that does get taken off, you could see some negative volatility in Lucid's case, even though it essentially doesn't really qualify all that much aside from leasing. But one additional thing that as well could really affect Lucid stock price is what came out after hours on Friday. So you did have a negative rating. So $2 hold RBC, Tom, who has a 44% success rating. I feel like logical investors will actually see that Tom is extremely bullish on Tesla and might just brush this negative rating under the rug a little bit. But again, the market's going to be really digesting this information on Monday as well. So yeah, honestly, everything I talked on has the ability to move the market. So it's going to be a crazy week. So stay tuned for that. Specific to Lucid, no fireside chats, nothing like that. The Montreal Auto Show is going to be concluding on Sunday, so the 26th. So essentially based on this, the next thing that they're going to be participating in is on Valentine's. So February the 14th, Canadian International Auto Show. Aside from that, there isn't anything at least scheduled on here. You know, Lucid, sometimes they just do things and then they post on social media. So that might be something, but as far as on their website, that's pretty much it. Looking at the actual options. So call options that was purchased on Friday, you are seeing a consensus for it to be roughly around that kind of above 350 mark. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 250. So that's kind of the parameters for this upcoming week that you can kind of pay attention to. And looking at the open interest, with it closing at $2 and change, so 270, that does mean that the $3 strike price and above all expires worthless. So that's kind of the downside of doing options, but you do have 2,000 at that $2.50 strike price. So market makers might be covering that potentially, but aside from that, not really all that much. Looking forward into this upcoming week, you have 9,000 at that $3 strike price and then 16,000 at that $3.50. So potentially, if Lucid does gain some good momentum, you might see some extra activity coming from shorts, because shorts and market makers have a financial interest in having it close below these strike prices. So we've kind of seen it a little bit with Lucid. Of course, I think with the strike prices so wide in Lucid's case, It doesn't happen all too often, but a lot of other stocks that is somewhat heavily shorted, you always see some manipulation for it to close, for instance, conveniently at like 299 or 249, for example, just to make those options expire worthless. So again, something to kind of stay tuned for that. Aside from that though, going into this upcoming week, 19.29% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 229.81 million shares overall are being shorted. Shorts did return a little bit on Friday, so they returned to 280,000 shares, but with Tesla earnings and GDP, Fed decision rate, they definitely will be pouncing all over Lucid if there is some negative data. So just kind of stay tuned for that. But right now with that $2.79, it is trading right now between this S2 and this S3. So essentially any stock trading between that range right now is kind of considered by the broader market to be rather damaged. So Lucid went from pretty much being very optimistic, so between the R3 and this R2, to getting hit quite hard. So I think in general, a lot of us already knew that Trump was going to make the EV sector kind of difficult. So I think that's one of the biggest things, at least in the short term, that's caused some disruption in Lucid's momentum. But aside from that, some points to really watch for. 281 and then $2.90 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points, and then $2.67. On the actual chart itself, if we kind of pop over here, as I mentioned in my last couple of videos, most likely this week up until Tesla earnings, you are going to see it trading between these 2 points right here. So right now it does have that 200-day moving average. 100-day moving average is fairly tight knit, so it's probably just going to trade between that ALMA and also that 50-day moving average up until Wednesday after hours, which that'll be that deciding point if it either breaks higher or lower. So again, for those of you that do weekly options, it might be beneficial, but I think all in all, it's going to be the kind of reacting to external data points or indirect data points, if whatever you want to word it as. So yeah, let me know your viewpoint. On a positive note, looking at Lucid's chart right here, it is considered very oversold. So a good piece of news, you could really see it push higher. So again, that's something that could potentially come out, but I feel like with it being so close to their earnings, they might not put anything out. I know in 2023, in the first half of 2024, usually 1 week before their earnings, they'd always kind of drop a very positive bomb, like a good piece of news, but that might come out in the next couple of weeks, so probably not this week in particular. So let me know your viewpoint and where you see things going. Given everything and all the data points, I actually do feel that it might be a little bit optimistic and a little push higher. I can't see it being feasibly above this 290 unless there is a hell of a lot of good data. I think just right now, Trump is going to be adding like a virtual blanket over EVs, really restricting growth. One thing to note though is that this actually just came out, even though it doesn't actually talk about Lucid exactly. It says you're going to be in rough shape. Rivian CEO to rivals backing off EVs. Kind of talks on how he even admits that essentially that $7,500 tax credit is going to hurt EVs, but that's going to be just more of a short-term pain. Long-term, it won't be necessarily that bad of a thing, but he even said it's going to be a little bit more challenging in the next couple of years. So yeah, I think in general, Trump is going to be adding a lot of uncertainty to the EV market. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Where do you see things going this week? Do you think it's going to pull down, or do you think it's going to kind of stay level? One thing to take note of though, like I said, I do feel that it could potentially move higher based on this. If it does break below this 50-day moving average, which is currently sitting at 261, then yeah, you can kind of anticipate a significant pullback. As I've mentioned, whenever Lucid does go below that 50-day moving average, historically it goes down about 20 to 30 to 40%. So yeah, it's kind of extreme, similar to what has happened right here. Beginning of October, it was sitting at roughly 350 and didn't really resurge up until roughly 240. So Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week, very volatile week. So let me know your viewpoint on Lucid. One final thing, pop over to my Discord, completely free. A lot of good people on there. So you can go there, talk shop, options, stocks, whatever floats your boat. So definitely worthwhile to go over there and take a look. Link to that is in the description below and also the comments. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.